All right. Been promising myself that I would start doing more of these. I've been reading so much cool things. Okay. So this one, you see, it was one of those moments where I'm starting to watch for this. That hard bastard was going over this article and it was getting me all spun up. And then I'm like, just read one of these things that sort of dovetails, because it was going into that white people and their demands of civility. It was very white and very so therefore very wrong or something like that. Well, because it was in the New York Times, journalists thought I would read something that people might find a little interesting. From Renegade History of the United States by Thaddeus Russell, The Jew was a Negro. The Rise of the Nerd. Yiddish language newspapers during the 1920s and 1930s paid careful attention to black Jewish relations and helped establish what might be called the liberal Jewish view on race. Influential, widely read papers such as the Forward, the Morgan Journal, and the Tageblatt agreed upon very little, according to historian Hazia Diner, but race and the lot of black Americans proved a striking exception. All the major Yiddish papers condemned legal segregation, supported civil rights, and praised black achievements, but they also made it clear that Jews and blacks should be culturally separate. Blacks had rhythm, good Jews did not. In the Yiddish press, according to Diner, descriptions of Negro life in Harlem were replete with dancing, gyrating men and women, sounds of bongo drums, which one Tageblatt writer called their national instrument. Resounded and exuberant, vibrant music filled the streets. In one article, Maurice Schwartz, a star of Yiddish theater, claimed, in no uncertain terms, that rhythm ran in the Negro's blood. Similarly, the English language Jewish Tribune wrote that one should expect colored dancers to put about 50 times more pep into a performance than the average white girl cares to attempt. And the American Hebrew declared that the rhythm of the Negro is vicious. It is a kinesthetic urge, one sways and bends with it. Overall, Jewish papers asserted that musical and rhythmic expression were the most distinctive characteristics of black cultural life. But in the same issues in which civil rights were championed and black musical genius celebrated, warnings were made to Jews who might cross the color line. Occasional references were made to the apparent affinity several Jewish entertainers had for black music, but any similarity between the two groups was attributed to suffering, not sensuality. As a forward review of the Jazz Singer put it, the film's Negro songs contained the minor key of Jewish music, the wail of the Chazan, the cry of anguish of a people who had suffered. The son of a line of rabbis well known how to sing the songs of the most cruelly wronged people in the world's history. During World War II, with the success demanding national unity, the federal government officially welcomed Jews into the white race. In 1943, the Immigration Naturalization Service for the first time denoted all Europeans as white on its forms for immigrants seeking American citizenship. The military remained thoroughly segregated between black and white. Even blood supplies from black and white donors were kept separate, but extraordinary measures were taken to merge Americans of European origins. According to the historian Gary Gerstle, the military for the first time formed the regiments of white men of every ethnicity and nationality. Sometimes, together for as long as 4 years, these units became extraordinary vehicles for melding the many streams of European Americans into one, and this assimilatory process was racialized from its inception because no blacks and few Asians were permitted to take part, in the sense that they were excluded from regiments defined as white. The effect of this integration was profound. According to historian Eric L. Goldstein, More than any other wartime development, the thorough integration of Jews and Catholics into the American military helped cement the public's view of these groups as unambiguously white. Suddenly, Jews and Italians were members of ethnicities rather than races. In the 1940s, best-selling books such as Ruth Benedict's The Races of Mankind and Ashley Montagu's Man's Most Dangerous Myth, The Fallacy of Race, rejected the existence of races among Europeans and claimed that differences among whites were cultural rather than biological. Opinion polls conducted after the war showed that for the first time, a majority of Americans did not identify Jews as a race. During and after World War II, Jews acted on the fears of racial mixing by moving en masse out of Harlem, the south side of Chicago, and other neighborhoods that were taking in black migrants from the South. Soon, fewer Jewish Americans were participating in renegade culture than observing it. As Goldstein notes, countless memoirs record the fascination of Jewish youth of these years with African American jazz artists whose performances in nightclubs and dance halls they would often attend. At the same time, the number of Jewish jazz musicians declined in the post-war period, and those who continued with the music, including such greats as Stan Getz, Lee Konitz, Herbie Mann, Red Rodney, Stan Levy, Lou Levy, Paul Desmond, Teddy Charles, and Shelley Mann, tended to follow the post-war trend away from swing and into non-danceable cool jazz and intricate, highly technical bebop. Jews also abandoned sports, in particular sports considered to be less cerebral and more primitive than others. According to Jewish boxing historian Alan Bodner, by 1950 there were virtually no Jewish boxers, and their numbers had been minuscule ever since. A similar decline occurred among Jewish trainers, but Jewish managers, promoters, and matchmakers continued to maintain a presence. According to Peter Levine, by the late 1940s, Jewish dominance of the American Basketball League was in clear decline. In the 1950 season, only 10 of the top 36 scorers were Jewish, and in the following year, league rosters indicated that only 9% or 11 of the ABL's players were Jewish. By the 1960s, Jews were more likely to be found in NBA boardrooms than on the hardwood. The most telling symbol of the Jewish loss of physical dexterity was the fate of the great Philadelphia SPHAS. In the early 1950s, the SPHAS, then led by the talented point guard Red Klotz, defeated the all-black Harlem Globetrotters in 2 exhibition games. Klotz later bought the SPHAS and changed the name of the team to the Washington Generals. In 1953, Klotz entered into an agreement to make the Generals the regular opponent of the Globetrotters in exhibition games staged to show off the black team's spectacular skills. When between 1953 and 1995, the Generals won 6 games against the Globetrotters and lost more than 13,000. After World War II, a physically inhibited, highly talkative suburban family replaced black-faced dancers and the basketball players as the most famous Jews in America. What began as a radio program in the 1930s about the Jewish family living in a Bronx tenement, the Goldbergs, became a television show in the 1940s and 1950s about the same family relocated to the suburbs. The obsession with fitting in with their new Gentile neighbors. In 1950, the Goldbergs were the 7th highest rated series on television. The show's creator and star, Gertrude Berg, was awarded the Emmy Award for Best Actress, and Philip Loeb, who played the patriarch of the family, was named Television Father of the Year by the Boys Club of America. Whereas Jews in popular culture before the war whirled about the screen and performed high-tempo dance numbers, most of the action in the Goldbergs takes place at the kitchen table or in the living room, where chess is played, classical music emanates from the phonograph, and the conversation focuses on how to become more modern. The topic of one episode is the shame that the Berg's character feels at not being able to participate in the new Latin dance craze. "You know I only waltz," she says. Jews continued to be featured prominently in American entertainment, but further and further removed from the sounds and moves of blackness. In the 1960s and 1970s, the most famous Jewish entertainers were the great popularizers of classical music: Aaron Copland, Leonard Bernstein, romantic balladeers like Eddie Fisher, Barbra Streisand, Edie Gourmet, Steve Lawrence, Burt Bacharach, Barry Manilow, and Neil Diamond, intellectual folk singers such as Bob Dylan, Paul Simon, Art Garfunkel, Carole King, Janis Ian, and Leonard Cohen, and a phenomenal number of film score composers including Alfred Newman, Elmer Bernstein, Bernard Herrmann, Marvin Hamlisch, Danny Elfman, Jerry Goldsmith, Philip Glass, James Horner, Howard Shore, Alan Menken, and Randy Newman. The physically awkward but intellectually gifted Nebish was foregrounded in film and television by Woody Allen, Dustin Hoffman, and Richard Dreyfuss, then later by Jerry Seinfeld, Adam Sandler, Ben Stiller, and Larry David. By the late 20th century, Jews had left the dance floor and arrived in America. But Jewish Americans who wish to revive their renegade heritage can now find heroes in the unlikeliest places. Though most Americans now think of her as the kindly former judge on a popular talent contest and are probably unaware of her ethnic background, Paula Abdul is as funky and as Jewish as any of the dancing Hebrews of the vaudeville era. Her father, Harry Abdul, is a Syrian Jew, and her mother, Lorraine Rikus, was born into one of the few Jewish families in St. Boniface, Manitoba. Abdul regularly attends Chabad of Bel Air, an Orthodox synagogue in Los Angeles. Since 1988, she has placed 5 singles in the top 40 of Billboard's Hot R&B hip-hop song charts, formerly called the Black Singles Chart, and 10 singles in the top 40 of Billboard's Hot Dance Club Play Chart, a weekly national survey of the most popular songs in dance clubs. Jews have also made impressive inroads into hip-hop. The Beastie Boys, a group formed in the early 1980s by Michael Diamond, Adam Yauch, and Adam Horovitz, are one of the longest-lived and most successful hip-hop groups. Rick Rubin, who convinced the Beastie Boys to switch from punk rock to hip-hop early in their career, founded Def Jam Records and created much of the music in the 1980s that made hip-hop the dominant genre in the music industry. In the late 1980s, Michael Barron of Far Rockaway, Queens, grabbed the mic and the stage name MC Search, styled his kinky hair into a high-top fade, busted MC Hammer-type dance moves, he would resent that, and became one of the leading rappers of his time as frontman for the group Third Base. And later as a solo act, Search produced 5 top 20 singles on Billboard rap charts. The Beasties and Search are often credited with creating the archetype of the white nigga or wigga. Today, 2 of the most sought-after producers of hip-hop beats are Scott Storch, an aficionado of bling jewelry, founder of Tough Jew Productions, and Alan Daniel Mammon, better known as The Alchemist, a master of combining disparate noises into hip-hop hits, who took his name from the Sephardic Jews of the Middle Ages who mixed common metals into gold, silver, and potions for eternal life. Mock them all you like as inauthentic wannabes, but Jewish wiggas might be truer to their heritage than any accountant, lawyer, or doctor will ever be. There's a whole section similar to this on the Italians, whole section similar to this on the Irish. Immigrants move into areas where there's usually just enough black people that they are kind of like, hey, these people kind of know how to have fun. At some point, these people then try to assert who they are, try to figure out who are we going to be in this society, because we aren't these people, because, now and then, black people would do things that would be quite not good. So as every group of people tried to figure out what their destiny of their people would be, as immigrants who became part of America, as the majority population tried to figure out what are these people going to be? You know, what are we going to do? It is what it is. I know there's a lot of this mentality of, oh, but this, oh, but that, would have, could have, should have. Yeah, would have, could have, should have. It's not the way things went. It's the way things are. So everybody is fundamentally, at some point, played black music and did it very well, was totally into it. Then they played, typically, early white American music, like folk music. Again, was into it, did it quite well. The present generation has forgotten how kooky and crazy America was. It's really actually important to think about that. The past must have been so sterile, so white, like paper. It wasn't sweaty, desperate, poor people helping each other eke out a living in a real wilderness that even the native people scarcely, if ever, settled down in. That they would move around with frequency because it's difficulty in being able to tame this area. And that it took like 100 nations' knowledge to get to our lifetime, and we're still trying to figure out how we're going to make things work. We still are desperately trying to figure out, are we going to be able to keep the water from flooding? Are we going to be able to keep the heat on? This is still a concern to this day. We have forgotten difficulty. We've forgotten how to have fun. We're having different kinds of fun, but I mean, we really have forgotten how to have fun. Yeah, liberals have just bled all the joy out of fun. I didn't know Paula Abdul was Jewish.